Welcome to the Impact School of Money. My name is Adam Davis. The mission of the Impact School of Money is to change the way that people are educated about money. This is episode 13, and to start today, I wanted to share a little story about the number 13. So for most people, the number 13 is an unlucky number. In my family, it is a lucky number. And anyway, but it all started of me thinking this morning of, how unlucky 13 is for some people, but then also how much money and marriage create conflict in marriage. They say that the number one cause of divorce is money, or the arguments over money. And so I started thinking about money, marriage, luck, 13, all these different things, and this is episode 13, it all started really with my dad. My dad was born on February 13th, and he was born on a Friday. And so it was always a joke in our family, or something that he always acknowledged at least. Every Friday the 13th, he would celebrate, talk about how great the number 13 was. It's his lucky number. And then he ended up meeting a gentleman by the name of Russ Verhoff when I was very young, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and they became basically best friends and have been really good friends ever since. And he was born on November 13th, which is also a Friday. And so they would get together and celebrate every Friday the 13th. And then my younger sister, got married before I did, and she got married on March 13th, which, because of the ongoing celebration in our family on Friday the 13th, her and her husband got married on a Friday the 13th, March 13th, which was Friday. When it was my turn, I guess, and as my wife and I were talking about getting married, we were looking at the calendar, and May 13th of 2011 just so happened to be on a Friday. So we were talking in March. We start looking at the calendar, wanted to get married in about 2 months. This was March 12th. We were having this conversation, looked at the calendar, and May 13th was on a Friday, and made the arrangements to get married on Friday the 13th to continue the tradition in the family. Then my youngest brother, 2 or 3 years later, as he was dating his now wife, talked about getting married, looked at the calendar, and they wanted to get married in about 3 months. And out on the calendar 3 months later was September 13th, which was also a Friday, and they got married on that day. And so in our family, my dad was born Friday the 13th. 3 of my 4 siblings got married on a Friday the 13th. And the only sibling that did not get married on Friday the 13th is now divorced. Does that have anything to do with the number 13? Probably not, but we, as the other 3 siblings, don't joke about this with her, but we joke about it amongst ourselves, that the reason that her marriage didn't work out is because obviously she didn't get married on Friday the 13th. So kind of fun to be doing episode 13 today. But to continue on with our conversation about money, I always say in financial seminars that I do, the number one cause of divorce is not money. The number one cause of divorce is marriage, and money comes in close second to that. But it is important to understand money and how it works and get educated about it. But the sad thing is it's just one of those things that's not taught in school. And so the Impact School of Money is meant to be that school and change the way that people are educated about money, but maybe not even change the way they're educated. How about just starting them getting educated on how money works? And that is the purpose of this school. And I am totally convinced if somebody was to log into this, watch the concepts and the principles and the things that are taught here, they would learn more about money in 3 months here and the practical application of it than they would in any class in school that also lasts about 3 months. I took finance classes in college. And I've now been in the financial services industry for 13 and a half years and don't use a single thing that I was taught in the finance school or the school of money from a university. Am I saying that all universities don't teach anything about money? That's not what I'm saying, but I am saying my experience from getting book knowledge and experience now getting real-world knowledge is very, very different in what is information and what is actually practical application that can help. And that is the reason why we do this, is to learn real-world rules of money. How does stuff really work, not theory, and how it has worked for people. Not saying these are things that I've experimented on myself, all of them, because that's impossible, but literally working with thousands of different people and hearing and experiencing how the different rules of money work. The next purpose is to learn how different products, services in the industry work. And then purpose number 3 is to learn how those things apply to us, or if you're in the financial services industry, how it applies to your clients. And so the impact money quote of the day comes from Billy Cox that says, you can't build a long-term future on short-term thinking. At the time of this recording, if you're listening to this in the future, it is October 25th of 2018, and if you were to go back and look at the market of what the charts are doing, the last few days and weeks have been kind of interesting in the market. Just yesterday alone, the market fell. In some cases, the Dow Jones fell 2 to 3% in a day. The Nasdaq 4%. And it's getting very, very interesting right now. But again, it's a short-term thing. Could it go on for a little bit longer? Yes. Could it be that yesterday was the last down day? Yes. But it's the long-term thinking when it comes to money, is to be thinking about the long-term thinking. So, the real-world rule of money for the day. You have $100. You lose 50%. You have $50. Kind of an obvious question. So talking about losses, gains, and then more importantly, what we're going to be talking about in this real-world rule of money is averages. And do averages really tell the story? Because here's what happens: is you meet with a financial person, financial consultant, financial advisor, financial whatever you want to call them, and a lot of the time they'll pull out a brochure and they'll show you what the average of this account or the average of that account has done. But the question is does that really tell the whole story, or is it just trying to make you feel good or try to help in making a wise decision? And there's something what we want to teach in this real-world rule of money is that there's a difference between average return and actual return. We'll talk about that. So to start that principle, if you have $100 and you lose 50%, that's kind of obvious of what the answer is. It's $50. We just lost half of our money. But if we gain that 50% back, it doesn't take us back to $100 like in math, where if we are at 0 or at 100, for example, and we subtract 50, we're at 50. If we add 50, we're back to 100. Well, that's how math works, but it's not how money works when we're applying money and percentages. So we have $100, we lose 50%, we're at $50. We take that $50, we gain our 50% back. It's 50% on the new balance. 50% of $50 is $25 plus our 50 puts us at 75. In order to get back to where we were at our original $100, if we've lost 50%, is we have to get 100% to just get back to where we were. That's why if you go back and you look at 2011 and go back 10 years to 2001, they call that period of time of 2001 to 2011 the lost decade. And the reason that they call it the lost decade is because if in 2001 you had $100,000 in the S&P 500, it went up, you know, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, 07. Then it went down in 2008 and 9. Then it came back up in 2010, back up in 2011, and you're exactly where you were in 2011 as you were in 2001. And I always joke with people, I say, now, if I was your financial consultant, helper, advisor, and I took $100,000 and in 10 years from now it went all over the place and in 10 years you had exactly the same amount of money, do I still have a job? And hopefully the answer to that would be no. The whole goal of money is to grow it, right? But then what's interesting is, say, okay, well, how do you figure you know, averages and how it works? And, you know, looking at this one in the middle, getting positive 50% one year, that would be pretty exciting. But check this out. Is 0% interest an exciting rate to get on money? No. But if we go back to this one and 2 years go by, we get negative 50 one year, positive 50 the next year, we're at $75, we really lost 25%. Where if we go to an account where someone had $100 at 0, they still have 100. The next year, it does 0 again. Their $100 stays $100. Or we go back to the previous one and lose 25%. It's more exciting to go up and down and all over the place. But what's interesting is how averages work. What is the average of 0 and 0? It's 0. But what is the average of negative 50 and positive 50 when you calculate it as an average? It's also 0. So one averages 0 and loses, one averages 0 and stays the same. And to really illustrate this, let's do it 10 years in a row. So here you have $1,000, and we're going to do up 10%, down 10% for 10 years. So if this was a math class and we gave you those 10 numbers and said, here, calculate the average of positive 10, negative 10, positive 10, negative 10, positive, negative 10 times in a row, so you have the same number of gains, 5 gains and 5 losses, the average would be 0. But if we look at this, we go up 10, it's 10% of 1,000, but then down 10% of 1,100, then up 10% of 990, down 10% of 1,089, and so on 10 times, where even though we went up 10 5 times, down 10 5 times, we end up losing $49 by the end. And so as we look at accounts, yes, a statement or a summary page of an investment or something will show what it's averaging, but we want to know what the actual return is. The actual return on our $1,000 here is a loss, where the average return could potentially be a positive number, and it still loses money. And so that's the real world rule of money today, understanding the difference between average and actual return.